COVID, its pathophysiology, is diagnosis, its treatment, as well as the prevention. So I will try to run through the slides sometimes, but we can cover it whichever the doubts during the question and answer. Now, we all of us always heard this word COVID-19. What do you mean by COVID-19? It is a coronavirus disease discovered in December 9 in China. That's why the COVID-19. So, basically, I request all participants to mute their audio, so it will be easy for everyone to listen it properly. Okay, so what happened in November, December in China? They observe at one they are getting a cluster of cases of pneumonia, and initially they thought it might be the another virus or it might be the temporary phenomena, and soon they realized that this is something which is endemic. This was not a local disease or something which is known to them. And SARS-CoV-1 is known to us because it happened in 2003 in China. But fortunately, at that time, it was endemic. But SARS-CoV-2 is not, initially they thought endemic, but now all of us know that it is a pandemic. Pandemics that almost the more than a few countries when it affects the pandemic. So it is a virus. The unfortunate part of this SARS-2 is that this particular virus developed the capacity to transmit from person to person, and that's where the we have lost everything control over this virus across the all countries. And up till now we know that more than 200 countries across the continent are affected, more than 5.5 lakh deaths reported worldwide, and WHO declared long back in March 11 it is a pandemic. So again, if you go into the depth of the cases, if you see coronavirus, though it is a dangerous, supposed to be as a pandemic, but it is a mild virus. 80% of the cases are mild and they are asymptomatic. Only up to 20% develop severe disease requiring hospitalization. And out of that 20%, only 5 to 8% require the ICU. So if we follow the certain precautions of physical distancing, mask, as well as hand hygiene practice, definitely we can cut down further this development of the severe disease, almost the 20%, and drop down ICU admission from 5 to 8% to less than 1%. And that is what the major difference in between prevention and the treatment. We have seen a lot of endemics, like in 2003, we have seen SARS-1. In 2013, we have seen the MERS, that is the Middle East virus in Middle East countries. We able to control it because they were endemic and they were not that much infective. Even H1N1, we have suffered a lot with the H1N1, but fortunately for H1N1, vaccine was available as well as the treatment was available, and H1N1 was not infective. The problem with this COVID-19 or this SARS virus COVID-2 is that first thing, there is no vaccine is available. Second thing, there is no definitive treatment is available. And third part is it is highly infective. If you go through the in memories in the past, H1N1, there was no major involvement of the healthcare worker. Unfortunately, with this COVID, there is a major involvement of health workers. So whole healthcare system is on the back foot. There is a threat to life to the doctors, sisters, class 3, class 4 who are working in ICU, and there where the major difference is happening in between H1N1 handling and this COVID-19 handling. So if you see the severity of the COVID till today, there are more than 1.2 crore cases across the globe. More than 5 lakh cases almost we have seen the mortality. But the good thing, always I try to see the positivity out of the all negative diseases. More than 70 lakhs recovered. That means the recovery rate is more than 60 to 65%, and approximately 5 to 10% will require the critical care or ICU. Back to the Indian statistics, up till now, till yesterday, it was 8.2 lakhs cases were reported in India, 22,000 deaths. They are not that much as compared to the European countries and America. In America, mortality rate was 5.9. In Europe, it was almost 6. China, it was 3.4, but India, it is round about 3%. So that is a one plus point with us. Might be we came to know this virus late, so we were quite geared up with the preventive as well as lockdown concept, as well as the few drug treatment was available. This might be the few of the reason, and on the top of that, BCG vaccination might have helped. That is one of the hypotheses. And total cases recorded up till now 5.1 lakh, and active cases are 2.8. This is the statistics. Statistics only gives you the idea how aggressively you go ahead with your management. And if you see the active cases and case fatality rate, we have observed it is varied across the India. In certain part it is 1.2, in certain part it is 5, 6, or some 3.4. But overall India it is 3%. And if you see the Gujarat, Mumbai, Pune, Maharashtra, as well as the nearby, this thing rate is more than 3%. So these reasons are different. We cannot compare one state with another state. There are so many differences in the healthcare system. Unfortunately, in India, we have the diverse system across India. We do not have the uniformity in healthcare source delivery as well as the government control over the society. So coming back to our core topic, whenever any patient, how it get transmit, I already told that one of the major drawback of this particular virus is person to person communication or transmission. If you see, if suppose this is your patient, initially it was thought because of the droplet, these are the large molecules or large particles, they can drop on the nearby subject like door handles, tables, or chairs, or hands, and with the contact of the another person they can cause the direct contact. This is a straightforward transmission of the COVID from person to person, that is a droplet. But there was another theory which was soon emerged, was a micro droplet. These are the micro droplet which is less than 5 micron diameter, and they almost travel to the 1 meter distance, and they can stay in air for a few hours, few minutes to few hours. And if the patient comes or anybody comes in that particular environment, he may acquire that, and that is where we lost the control over the spread of this disease. The airborne nature of this disease is pushing us badly on the increased number of the patient as well as the increased number of the mortality. So there are two ways this virus can spread. A standard is the droplet, that is a large molecule, and the micromolecules or micro particles, they can spread to the airborne. They stays in airborne for a few minutes to hours. And if you are not wearing a mask, or if you are not taking the proper precautions like physical distance more less than 1 meter, there is a chances of infection is there. Now, this was a beautiful slide I came across in April journal. It was one of the, this slide depict the one of the transmission mode. So if you see, this was in around about January 2000 NHM article. We said the bronchoalveolar lavage is one of the best way, but unfortunately we cannot do in each and every patient either, because it is not advisable to do the bronchoscopy during this pandemic. In respiratory samples, which is the standard way of taking the sample, is a nasopharyngeal. But again, the sensitivity and specificity is 50 to 60%. If you take the only pharyngeal swab, it is 30%. If you take the nasal as well as the pharyngeal, you can go up to the 60% to 70%. And one need to understand that the corona is a clinical diagnosis. You cannot only depends about the swab report. If you are clinically highly suspicious, swab is negative, please repeat the swab or treat him as a corona. So nasopharyngeal swab culture sensitivity will be round, sensitivity specificity will be round about 60 to 70%. Then one of the frequently asked question, what about the pregnant woman? And it is documented that mother to child transmission doesn't happen. It is negative in amniotic fluid, cord blood, as well as the neonatal throat swab. I have came across personally 5 to 6 patients, corona positive patients who are delivered. We have checked the babies on the day 1, day 5, but they were negative. So the main questions will come about the breastfeeding. How to breastfeed this patient? There are 2 ways you can go ahead. Either you can have express milk of that pregnant woman, delivered woman, and feed that, or that mother has to take the extreme precautions. There are very standard guidelines for feeding, but mother to child is not documented till today. Regarding the saliva, this was one of the most discussed paper. Saliva, there is a 91% of the time you can detect. So there is if a patient is intubated, take the ETT sample. That is much more reliable rather than nasopharyngeal swab. So saliva, if possible, try to take the saliva along with the nasopharyngeal swab. That might be give the 90% of the time yield. Feces, that is a GI. Another, that is frequently asked question, what about the GI symptoms? Yes, 12% of the time the patient, we can get virus in feces as well as fecal matter. So it is 12% is a known GI transmission. What about the semen and the vaginal fluid? No, it is not documented. So this is how the natural history of the COVID-19 recorded, and as accordingly that we can suspect this patient might be infected. If you see which agents affects about against this virus, let me tell you, this virus is a mild virus. This virus can easily get away with the simple hand washing. Another agents like ethanol, like we are using the hand rub in hospital, that effects can be there for 20 minutes, up to 20 minutes you can get the effect of the hand rub. Sodium hypochlorite is advisable 0.1 to 0.5% for the coronavirus. This SCO2 229 is a coronavirus. So, commonest solution which is used for the disinfection in clinics, in OPDs, in ICUs, in wards, as well as in healthcare settings, sodium hypochlorite, 0.1 to 0.5%. It is not only dilution you need to see. You need to see the frequent cleaning. You need to see the regular cleaning. And the most important thing we have came across that there are so many companies as well as some nagarpalika started those tents or those passages which are spraying sodium hypochlorite. Please, this concept is not acceptable. This is not scientific. Nobody can say that the spraying that sodium hypochlorite can get away with the virus. First thing. Second thing, this solution is highly concentrated. It can cause injuries to your eyes. Sometimes you can develop the skin itching as well as the skin disease. So discourage such a use of passages, short passages where the person can pass and feels that he is corona free. No, and it can create a false sense of security. That is what the one of the major concern with the all expert committees. So it is strongly discouraged to develop the passages of the sodium hypochlorite. You can use in diluted form for the cleaning. You can use the hand rubs for disinfecting your hands. So hand washing, hand washing, hand washing. That is one of the most simplest, easy, cheapest form and easily available to get away from this virus. Whenever you are coming across any, you are touching the patient, you are touching any instrument, you are touching any telephone,
Sound
your keyboard, wherever you are coming across, please before and after do the hand washing. And one should know steps of the hand washing. That hand washing is doesn't like you just take some few drops on your hand and rub on palm or something. You have to follow that key. You are thoroughly washing it. These are the very common steps. You can take the picture and put it on the walls of your ICUs as well as the wards as well as clinic. Now, next concept is regarding the mask. Again, there are a lot of myths about the mask. There is a cotton mask, there is a surgical mask, and there is an N95 mask. Cotton mask is neither filtrate virus as well as bacteria. It is just frequent touching to nose and your mouth. That's all it prevents. So for common public, we generally recommend the cotton mask. Surgical masks are very common in medical field in OPDs. So what we advise, surgical mask is sufficient enough. Those who are working in a non-risky environment, like those who are not working in isolation ward, those who are not working in emergency department, those who are not running the flu OPDs, those who are not coming across the any high risk corona patient, okay, they can use the surgical mask. So in regular OPDs, regular wards, regular clinics, regular ICUs, you can use the surgical mask. But one need to understand the pitfalls of the surgical mask. First thing, it is always loosely fitting. If you wear specs and if you find there is a fog, that means your mask is leaking. It is not problem with the mask, it's the problem with the leaking. So just make sure that your mask is tightly fitted. Second thing, if you get wet, then it is useless. Please change that mask. Third thing, it is a single-use mask. You cannot use the same mask for 2 days or 3 days. You cannot. It is maximum 8 hours you can use such a mask. And you should wear the eye protection. If you are using the surgical mask, please wear the eye protection like goggles to prevent the droplet infection coming across your contact with your eyes, and chances of infection will be get more. Then regarding the N95 mask, again there is a huge myth about the N95 mask. N95 mask no need to wear by everyone. N95 mask should be wear by healthcare workers who are in a close proximity to the infected patients, like those who are working in isolation ward or ICU, those who are working in an emergency department or casualties, those who are working in a flu OPD or chest OPD. Second thing, N95 mask require the test. Without test, if you use the mask, then might be there will be pressure source, might be you will find it very uncomfortable, rebreathing will be problem. Third thing, N95 masks are electrically charged. So you cannot, you should take a care, it should not come across any sunlight, or it should not come across any water or any liquid. Otherwise, they will lose its protection mechanism. They are 95% of effective against the virus. His name is N95. There are N99, N98, N90, N100 masks are also available. The simple to understand, they protect 95%, 98%, 99%, and 100% from it. So most important part about N95 mask is the fitting test. You need to take it. Everybody's face is not same. Everybody's size of the mask is not similar. You need to test that which mask is fitting yourself and then use. Now N95 mask can be reused. Regarding the cost is high is one of the drawback, but you can reuse the mask. So what you should do, just number that mask. So if suppose number one mask you use for 8 hours, after the use, just put it in a dry cotton bag or plastic bag. Keep it in a dark place. On the fifth day you can use. So one mask you can use alternate with the gap of the 5 days at least for 5 times. So what we are doing in our institute, we are providing the 5 N95 masks per employees for 1 month. So they have to follow this protocol. So if you bypass any one of this, you are under the risk of infecting. The most important thing, you should know how to wear the mask. There should not be the leak at the nose. There should not be leak. This is one of the worst way of wearing the mask, because your chin and everything is open. So virus can easily go. Virus size is very small. It's a micro size. And one of the most important thing you should remember, that don't use mask with the walls. They are not advisable during the pandemic. Whenever you are using the mask with the wall, that means you are safe, but your next person is not safe, because these walls are not filterable. They can easily throw out the virus outside. If suppose I am infected and I am using the N95 mask with the wall, that means I am probably I will infect my whole of the staff while working 8 hours in my hospital. So mask with the wall during the pandemic. Use the N95 mask with the proper fit test. Okay, now with this very basic preventive measure and day-to-day concern, will come to the symptoms. Symptoms are varied. Believe me, the corona is completely unpredictable. It may present with a neurological presentation, may present it with the pulmonology, may present it with the GI, may present it with the ophthalmic presentation, may present with any symptoms. But commonest, there has to be the fever, headache, cough, the dry cough. These are generally the cough is dry cough. So these are the cardinal symptoms of corona, along with the breathing difficulty. Since it is a respiratory virus, the breathing difficulty is anticipated. So these are the cardinal symptoms. But patient may present with the loose motion, that is a GI symptom. Patient may present with the drowsiness, loss of taste, loss of smell. Patient may present with the stroke. Because if you see the pathophysiology of the coronavirus, there are three main pathophysiological aspects. First thing is the infection. Second thing is the severe inflammation. Third thing is the microvascular coagulopathy. So what happens? The patient may present with the heart attack, that is a MI with the classical ST elevation changes. Patient may present with stroke, large vessel stroke. Patient may present with the venous sinus thrombosis. Patient may present with the encephalitis. Patient may present with loose motion or any GI symptom, pancreatitis. And nowadays, I am seeing most of the poisoning patients are coming positive. The reason you have to see that the relatives and the patients are always hiding the history. So whenever you are coming across any poisoning, there is no direct relation with corona, but probably the reason of suicide might be the corona. So do swab in those patients. So this is how you can pick up in your day-to-day practice. The bottom line is every patient might be corona if you are not finding in your usual history. Now, how to diagnosis? We are a resource limited country. We cannot afford to have labs in each and every district and each and every city. In Pune, Mumbai, there is a NIV. In metropolitan cities, we can get the report within 4 hours, 6 hours, sometimes within 1 hour with the gene expert. But I always wonder what the periphery people must be doing. Simple to understand. I always tell that the corona is a clinical diagnosis. Okay, clinically you are suspecting. You know that your lab report is going to, swab report is going to come after sometimes 48 hours, 72 hours. You cannot wait. Go to the hemogram. Hemogram can be easily available within few hours. Just see the lymphopenia. Lymphopenia is one of the most common laboratory finding in COVID patient. Almost 83% of the time you can get the lymphopenia. If your lymphopenia on day one is suppose some value, and if it is decreasing in next 2 days, that means the patient is worsening. That means the patient mortality might be high. Lymphopenia is a good predictor of mortality in corona patients. So as a routine, we generally say it is the corona panel. Do the hemogram, urea creatinine, electrolyte, X-ray chest, and certain inflammatory markers like IL-6, D-dimer, ferritin, LDH, and just follow them. Baseline values has to be there. So easy to understand is the lymphopenia. Then you can do the LFT, you can do the lactate, CRP, IL-6, ferritin, D-dimer, and you can follow this patient. Now, next question, which is very frequently asked question, is which diagnostic test? There are three types of the diagnostic. The molecular detection, that is the RT-PCR, which is one of the commonest way to diagnose, but already I mentioned it may take time because in Pune I can get it within 4 hours. At your place might be 48 to 72 hours. Antibody detection, that is big, you can say the noise about the antibody detection. And the third is antigen detection. Now, one need to understand how the virus spreads, and then we come back to this slide particularly. Now, look at this. Whenever anybody get infected, for 14 days there is always antigens are in your body, and your antibodies start developing after the 7 days onwards. They will go peak to the 14, 21, and might be later on. So, if you go through the testing, antibody test has no role in corona diagnosis. Please don't go by the antibody testing. Whatever the herd immunity we are expecting, it is not yet documented even in China. Now they are almost 8 months over the infection, but it is not documented by any country. So antibody detection, big no. Don't rush behind the antibody detection. Don't rush behind the diagnosis on the basis of the disease. Now two tests are remaining: the molecular test, that is the RT-PCR, and antigen detection. Yes, antigen detection has a role. Antigen detection, you can use it as a screening test. If suppose you do the antigenic test, one of the advantage of antigen test, you get the report within few hours, maybe half an hour, 1 hour, you can get the antigen detection. Okay, if it is positive, then it is likely to be corona. You have to confirm with the molecular detection. You cannot diagnose on the basis of the antigen detection corona. You have to do the molecular detection. If suppose your antigen detection is negative, okay, this is less likely to be corona. So it is like a screening test. Sensitivity specificity is not very high, but you can use it for the fast cross-checking whether this patient is a highly suspected or corona. RT-PCR, yes. Now, RT-PCR, I always say that you have to ask your lab which method you are doing. There is a gene expert. So what is mean by the lab? You have to ask to the lab. There are different labs use the different kit. There is a MyLab kit, there is a COBMAT, there is a gene expert, there is a TrueNet. How it differs, CDC has advised if there is a viral count of the 1000 to 3000 is a diagnostic. Now you have to ask your lab what is the limit of detection. Limit of detection means the number of virus needed to get that test positive. For example, NIV in Pune gives diagnosis. Their limit of detection is 3200. So if the virus count is 1000, this test will come negative. Clinically might be he will have corona, but the test will be negative. On the other hand, if you do the gene expert, whose limit of detection is 250 copies per ml, that means even with the 250 of the viral count, it will give positive. So for initial diagnosis on day 1 to day 5, gene expert might be a good idea, but it is not possible to have every patient. Some labs give the 5000 limit of detection. So might be one NIV will give report positive, another report will be negative. And that is what the problem happening regarding the misunderstanding of the common people. One lab report gives positive, one lab report gives negative. It is nothing to do with the lab. It is probably the day of which day the patient presented, at what interval they did the test, what was the limit of detection of that particular lab to diagnose the test, and at what stage of the disease this patient. So we should at least know that one lab is positive and one lab is negative doesn't mean that there is some commercial aspect or there is some big error. This might be possible under the given condition. So to just summarize in a one slide about the lab diagnosis, suppose you have a COVID suspect patient, do the antigen test. If the antigen test is positive, confirm with the RT-PCR it is a positive case. If it is negative, but you are clinically very highly suspicious, go ahead with the RT-PCR, you can get the positive. If it is negative, you are not at all suspecting, okay, you can take your own time to go ahead with this thing. So this is how you should know which test to do, when to do, why to do, and how to correlate with your clinical finding. Please don't ignore your clinical judgment over the test. I have seen the patients who need the 4 RT-PCR tests to diagnose, but clinically I was 100% sure. We have offered them the antiviral, we have offered them the tocilizumab, we have offered them the all sorts of the supportive treatment, intubation, ventilation. There was a tremendous pressure from the relatives. Why you are keeping negative patients in your wards or in positive ICU? We said, no, this is the clinical diagnosis. I will go by the clinical, and we proved it on the 3rd or 4th sample. So you need to believe on yourselves rather than the only lab report. Regarding the imaging, there is no specific thing about the corona. You can get hilar shadows prominent, you can get bilateral pneumonia, you can get a light lower lobe pneumonia, you can get right upper lobe pneumonia, you can get extensive bilateral shadows with pulmonary edema, you can get ARDS picture. So anything, your normal X-ray. So it is very difficult to judge on X-ray whether it is a corona or non-corona. Always on the background of your clinical history, you can say it might be the corona, and your normal X-ray doesn't rule out corona. So which one is the more sensitive test for the radiological point of view? HRCT. Yes, HRCT, there is a different scoring system. If you do it in the first 3 days, your HRCT will be normal. But if the patient, from the start of the symptom, if the patient has a symptom on the 9th, and if you do the HRCT on the 13th, and on HRCT, there are the GGOs. GGOs means ground glass appearance. Typical ground glass occurrence you will see on a chest. So it gives you the percentage, 10%, 20%, 25%, 30%, 50%. Accordingly, you can decide the severity of that disease. But if suppose there is a GGOs on the HRCT, it is the diagnosis. You can say it is highly suspicious of this thing. Even your swab is negative, please repeat the swab. On the basis of GGO, you can label him as a highly suspected corona patient, and you can start the antiviral treatment. I have picked up so many patients. Now, like in every stroke patient nowadays, by protocol, we are doing CT scan, brain, and HRCT. So what happens? CT scan shows the large vessel. This is we plan for thrombectomy or thrombolysis, but HRCT shows the GGO. So we just create that awareness or give the alert to the performer that this is likely to be corona patient. Wear full PPE, take proper precautions, and then go ahead with the intervention. So this is one of the. I will suggest that on the 4th day onwards, please do the HRCT if it's possible. Even walk-in patient, even your 90% saturation is 96, 97% on pulse oximetry. These GGOs will give the idea that this is likely to be corona, and this might be the moderate to severe form. If your core that CT scan score up to 6 is no corona, 6 to 12 is mild, is moderate, and more than 15 is severe. So on that basis also you can anticipate this patient is likely to be deteriorating. This patient may require ventilator. This patient may require oxygen. And if you provide the oxygen in an early stage, you may prevent the mortality. The whole game of the corona is the early pickup, early treatment, and early optimization. And that is what they did in the Dharavi, in the Mumbai. How they control, they just went to the every house in Dharavi, picked up the high-risk patient. They just take the oxygen saturation on pulse oximetry. Those who are high risk with the pulse oxygen saturation less than 92%, they brought them to the hospital, provided them the oxygen, optimized them, and again discharged after the 5 days. And so what is happening? Because of the lockdown, because of the fear of isolation, because of the lot of nonsense breaking news happening on the media, there is a fear factor amongst the common people. They are not heading towards the hospital, even if they are breathless. So this approach may help you to pick up the early patients and prevent them on going on a ventilator or any bypass. Now, if you see the timelines, like if suppose somebody get exposed, then incubation period is 7 days, 7 to 10 days incubation period. On third, fifth day, he will start, out of fifth day onward, he will start having the symptoms. On 10, 5 to 10 days, there is an early pulmonary phase. Then your 10 to 15 days, there will be cytokine storm. And then, so you have to pick up in this particular part, 5 to 10 days. 5 to 10 days is a crucial. How early you pick up the GGOs, how early pick up you the deterioration, how early you initiate the antiviral treatment. And unfortunately, if you fail to do that or patient reach in a later phases, if patient develop the cytokine storm, which you can diagnose clinically. There is no need to wait for the IL-6. I know that IL-6 is not easily possible at the periphery. If suppose anybody has a persistent fever after the 8 days, if anybody's oxygen requirement is going up after the 8 days, if patient is hypoxic after the 8 days, or there is a hypotension, you can assume that it is a cytokine storm. You can offer him the anti-inflammatory or immunomodulator therapy in terms of the tocilizumab or itolizumab. These are the two drugs approved. Steroids already we are giving from the day one, and you can accelerate the optimization of this patient on the basis of the cytokine storm. So one need to understand key from exposure, incubation period, early phase, late phase, and terminal phase. So 5 to 10 days or 5 to 15 days are generally the crucial for offering them treatment. So which are the best practices in treatment? So simple. If suppose somebody is positive, go to the one arm. If it is asymptomatic or he has a fever but he's not breathless, ask him to do the chest radiograph and oxygen saturation. If the oxygen saturation is more than 96, ask him for the home quarantine. Generally, it is not 5 to 7 days, it is 10 days in India at present. And daily home quarantine, I will come to that. It is not like that you just send them home and ask them to stay at home and mix with everyone. There is a specific way of advice for the home quarantine. In any given a time, if drops the saturation during the home quarantine period, he has to come to the hospital. Suppose he is positive but symptomatic, that means there is a persistent fever, there is a tachypnea, there is a tachycardia, there is a breathlessness. Okay, he can be advised the ward or ICU admission on the basis of the oxygen saturation and the oxygen requirement. Monitor oxygen saturation, heart rate, send the basic investigation I told you, like a WBC count, CRP, D-dimer, chase, and the IL-6. If suppose during the observation patient deteriorate, that means the cytokine storm, sudden worsening of the symptoms or drop in oxygen saturation, is likely to be in a cytokine storm. Do IL-6, ferritin. If IL-6 levels are, your baseline IL-6 is 10, and if today is 60, that means it is rising. There is nothing like that. IL-6 of 300 and 400, our patients are more worse rather than no. Even on 80 IL-6 patient might be serious. So you have to follow the trends of the IL-6. If they are rising trends of the IL-6 and ferritin, this is likely to be your cytokine storm, and you can offer the treatment. So how to manage? There are three categories: mild, moderate, severe, on the basis of the clinical features, on the basis of the CT and X-ray, and on the basis of the lab. If suppose anybody's saturation is more than 94% on room air, respiratory rate is normal, less than 24, and there is no pneumonia on X-ray, or a CT scan, there is the GGOs are less than 25%, and on admission, his parameters like a CRP, ferritin, they are not raised. He's a mild. Because see, unless until you label them mild, moderate, severe, you are not going to offer them the treatment. So mild treatment is different, moderate treatment is different, and severe is different. And patient may come directly in a severe as a severe case. Patient may come as a mild. Moderate, if the saturation is 90 to 94%, tachypnea and pneumonia on X-ray is a moderate. GGOs are 25 to 75% on HRCT. And now your CRPs are raised more than 50. Ferritin is raised more than 500. D-dimer is raised. So this is moderate case. And it may go into the severe case. It will end up with the severe case if you do not offer them the proper treatment. And the severe, those are obviously saturation less than 90, respiratory more than 30, they are on BiPAP, oxygenation, ventilators, pneumonia is worsening. Your GGOs are either 75% or 100%, that is a grade 4. Your CRPs are 3 times more than the normal, more than 150. Your ferritin is jumping, everything is jumping, then it is a severe case. And what should be treatment? already I explained, you have to go to the incubation, symptomatic, early, and the late phase. That means the mild, moderate, severe. If you are in between 5 to 10 from the day of symptom, that is you are in a early, you can say early phase of the disease, uh, mild disease, where the viral replication is the main issue. The main target should be the how to avoid the viral replication, and your antivirals comes into the play. So generally their fever, malaise, cough, these are very symptoms. Offer them the antiviral. Which are the antivirals now? Remdesivir is a quite prominent drug. Flavipiravir is another oral form. The problem with the flavipiravir is that you have to take the number of tablets. The one tablet is of 200 milligram and the dose is 1800 milligram BD. That means you have to take 9 tablets in the morning and 9 tablets in the evening, at least on the day one. And from day two, it is 800 milligram BD. That means 4 tablets BD. You can go up to the 7 days to 14 days, the full course. Fortunately, it is not very costly. The whole cost of the 14 days is 10,000. But the number of days. So patient has to conscious, obeying, cooperative. Then only he can take the so many tablets. So flavipiravir is one drug. Second is the remdesivir. Remdesivir dose is 200 milligram IV bolus on day one, followed by 100 milligram OD for 5 days. Maximum you can go up to the 10 days if your patient is not responding. Remdesivir is getting metabolized to the liver, so one should be careful if there is a liver function tests are deranged. Every day you have to do the LFTs. If your ALT, AST are rising more than 3 times from the baseline, then you have to withhold the remdesivir. Remdesivir is not so safe drug. While infusing the remdesivir, you have to be very careful. You have to give it over 1 hour to 1.5 hours, because infusion related patient may have the hypotension, body, or any cardiac issue. So one need to understand, go through the full manual of remdesivir and all these things. Ivermectin, there was one paper from the Bangladesh, not paper, there was a news from the Bangladesh, but it is not that much proven. Hydroxychloroquine, yes, there are so much debate is going about the hydroxychloroquine prophylaxis. Prophylaxis, yes, everybody should give the hydroxychloroquine 400 BD on day one and then 200 milligram once a week till 7 to 8 weeks. It is standard ICMR advice and one need to follow. Regarding the mild cases, yes, hydroxychloroquine has a still role in treating the mild cases. Dose is for 400 OD on day one, followed by the 200 OD for 5 days. Only you have to careful with the cardiac patients, because hydroxychloroquine has a strong drug reaction with the azithromycin. So please do not prescribe azithromycin or hydroxychloroquine in a combination. Second thing, please do not prescribe on OPD basis. Third thing, if the patient is admitted on the hydroxychloroquine, daily take the ECG. Follow the QT interval. If your QT interval is more than 500, then it is likely to be toxicity. Please withhold the hydroxychloroquine. So those who are hypertensive, those who are IHD, those who are recent angioplasty, those who are more than age is more than 65 with uncontrolled diabetes, please, these are the few of the contraindications for prescribing hydroxychloroquine. I haven't came across any complication of the hydroxychloroquine last 3 months. We have used in more than 500 patients, but with all these precautions, we are not blanketly giving it to the each and every patient. And vitamin C as a supportive. In moderate cases, even in every mild to moderate, you can add the anti-inflammatory. Now, initially we started with the methylprednisolone 1 milligram per kg for 3 to 5 days. But now after the recovery trial, dexamethasone 6 milligram OD for 10 days is advisable. Please prescribe it. It is very effective. Second thing, it is cheaper. It is easily available. And the one of the beauty of the dexamethasone, you can give oral. If suppose patient is taking oral, give 6 milligram OD for 10 days. So we prefer dexamethasone over the methylprednisolone. But again, one need to understand there is an interaction between the dexamethasone and remdesivir. If your patient is on the remdesivir, prefer methylprednisolone, because the dexa may affect on the half-life of the remdesivir. So methylprednisolone, if the patient is on remdesivir, if the patient is not on remdesivir, please prescribe the dexa for 10 days. Then one of the pathophysiology of the corona is microvascular coagulopathy. So from day one, those who require the oxygen or those who are obese or the high risk comorbid condition, please prescribe the low molecular heparin 0.4 sub-OD. But if suppose the low molecular heparin is not available because of the cost or anything, you can use the 5,000 intensity IV heparin, 5,000 intensity unit BD. So it is standard recommendation. And those in a severe cases, those who are on the ventilator, those who require the higher oxygen on BiPAP or high flow, you can use the double doses of the anticoagulation, like low molecular heparin 0.4 BD or 0.6 BD or heparin infusion. This is advisable. This is very standard management of corona. You can follow this anticoagulation with the help of the either D-dimer or if possible do the tag. But D-dimer is best way to follow this particular anticoagulation therapy. Like the D-dimer on day was 1,000, it become 10,000. That means obviously there is a microvascular coagulopathy is worsening. The chances of the PE as well as are high. So I will straight away increase my enoxaparin to 0.6 BD, or I will put it on the IV heparin. This is how clinically you can judge or take a decision regarding the drugs. So if you ask me the very simple question, when you will introduce the antiviral, I will introduce in the first phase, like 5 to 10 days. When there is a mild patient is in a mild disease, do not require the ventilator or oxygen, because my first target is reduce the viral, control the virus replication. I don't want to offer the all high-fi treatment when the patient is already deteriorated and chances of mortalities are very high. So initially 5 to 10 days, I will offer him the antiviral. I will offer him vitamin C. I will offer him low molecular heparin if in a very high risk patient. I will offer him the optimization, proper hydration, proper, even paracetamol 1 gram 6 hourly gives you a lot of comfort to that patient. Patient need to sleep quietly. So there is some one USA paper say that you give some mild sedation so that patient can sleep, because in sleep your basic metabolism rate will come down and viral replication may reduce. That is one of the hypotheses behind that. So what we offer to the mild treatment, the complete bed rest, good food. We advise the home food to the all patient because they might not be comfortable with your packed food. We advise them the mobile. We advise them the all entertainment. We advise them the newspaper. We advise them the vitamin C, zinc. We give them the antiviral if the patient is taking orally fluvipiravir. If the patient is requiring oxygen, remdesivir. Those patients who are in the very mild, we give them the hydroxychloroquine. We are not giving Tamiflu, it has no role. We are not giving azithromycin, it has no role. We are not giving higher antibiotic, it has no role. If your procalcitonin is normal, it's possible to do that. Initially, there is no role of the higher antibiotic in such cases. And this is how you can proceed. Suppose patient, in spite of the treatment, landed with the moderate, go ahead with the oxygen therapy and the increased doses of the low current. And if you landed with the severe or cytokine storm, you can add immunomodulators. That means the tocilizumab. Its dose is 8 milligram per kg. That means 400 milligram OD. You can repeat the second dose. But please be careful while using the tocilizumab. You have to select the patient. What do you mean by selection of patient? Patient should not have the uncontrolled diabetes. Patient should not be the more than 65 age. Patient is procalcitonin levels are high, or patient is on intubation and ventilation, and chances of secondary infections are high. Please, I request you, don't start tocilizumab. You landed with the more risk rather than the benefit, because they are immunosuppression, immunity goes down, and rather than corona, this patient dies because of the secondary infection. So you have to be very careful while selecting the patient on tocilizumab. It is not blanket cover. It is nobody can force doctors. If any VIP patient comes and insists for tocilizumab, we are, believe me, we are not following that. I say it is my decision. I am the owner of this patient, and I will take decision. You cannot force me which drugs to give to the which patient. That is the decision of the treating doctor. This was a paper recently we published in IGCCM Current Approaches, and I was one of the authors. These are the different therapies we are offering: remdesivir, hydroxychloroquine, steroids, tocilizumab, heparin, and convalescent plasma. And though it is moderate to severe, it was we have written this paper quite early, but now you can give it in a mild cases also. Hydroxychloroquine in all three. We are in India. Please try to understand. We have to use the cheaper and the effective drugs. Steroids in every part, tocilizumab moderate to severe, but again you have to titrate the risk against the benefit. Low molecular heparin, all types of the mild, moderate, severe, and you have to upgrade or increase the dose as per the D-dimer, and convalescent plasma in severe or even in mild cases. We'll come to that. So if you see the management of hypoxia, it itself is a different part. I'm not going to cover too much, but provide them the initially oxygen like nasal O2, simple mask, venturi mask, mask with the reservoir, or non-breathing mask. If they do not settle, start on the high flow. If they do not settle, go ahead with the NIV. If they are not very comfortable on the HNC, try proning. Now, this is something which is new on the background of the corona. This is known as the spontaneous proning or self-proning. Patients are conscious. Patients are cooperative. Explain them what is meant by this proning. Explain them that key, you have to lie down on your tummies. Initially, you might feel suffocated, but over a period after 10-15 minutes, your chest will be clear and you will feel better. And believe me, during this spontaneous or self-proning, be with the patient, assure that you are there to save them. And the results are fantastic. Now I have three patients who themselves follow the spontaneous training. For my order to follow the spontaneous training. So there is some way, like you can lie
चिकन पट्टी लावली काय बेकार तुला वाटलं
and after finishing, you can go to the right lateral.
चिकटच असतंय चिकट
Like that, you can.
बावळट सारखं वागते
Somebody is talking in between Uday. So, if in spite of all these things, patient deteriorate, go ahead with the invasive ventilation like any other viral infection or bacterial infection and continue the proning. So, one need to understand which technology, which facility, which way of oxygen support you are deciding as per your patient deterioration, mild to severe. You can go ahead. Sometimes patient directly you can put a high flow nasal oxygen and you will find the difference. Now, there is again big noise about the conversion plasma therapy. One need to understand this is not a drug. This is, though it is like a treating like a drug, it is not a drug. It is not available in your store. You just prescribe conversion plasma, it will be available. One need to understand what is the hypothesis behind that. Whenever anyone develop the corona, on 14 days he become non-infective, and actually antibodies start developing after the 28 days. Suppose I acquire the corona on the 1st of July, I will start getting my adequate antibodies on 28 days onward. Then one need to find out whether the person to person there will be the change in the response. Like somebody will develop the adequate antibodies, somebody will develop the inadequate antibodies. So it is not like that every corona patient is a donor. So whenever somebody has a corona and he gets discharged, after the 2 weeks you have to call him. You have to check for the all infections like HIV, HCV, this thing. Second thing, you have to check for the antibody titer. His antibody titer has to be the 1:1000 and 70%. Then only he is the fit to donate. Third thing, he should be young and healthy male. Fourth thing, you are using the plasma therapy technique, plasmapheresis technique. You should have the good veins. He should have the good hemoglobin. He should have the good health to donate. So there are, and preferably male. He should not be in the childbearing age of the female. There are so many things in selection of the donor, first thing. Second thing, every patient needs 400 ml of the plasma. So you can procure the 200 milligram, 200 ml from the one and 200 ml from the another donor if there are multiple donors. But unfortunately, if you do not have the multiple donors, you can have the 400 ml from the same person and you can infuse it to this thing. Now, this is not a very safe thing. It is at the end of it is a plasma. It can transmit the infection. It can give the reaction. So your selection of the patient, your selection of the donor, your technique, your safety measures, you have to explain it to the complete to the patient, and then you can transmit it to the those deserving patient. Yeah. ICMR guidelines says in the mild cases where the PO2 FO2 ratio is 300, while few of the institute fall in the moderate to severe. That means where the PO2 and FO2 ratio is less than 200. So at present, if you have enough donor, at present, if you have facility, at present, if your patients are ready, it is one of the prominent therapy along with the antiviral and immunomodulator and the rest of it. It is not replacement for antiviral as well as the immunomodulator. And the next important thing, as per the ICMR guidelines and the government, you cannot charge for the investigation of the donor. It takes around about 25 to 35,000 rupees to test the one donor and complete the whole plasmapheresis process and get that plasma. So that who will bear that cost is a big question, but we are trying to find out the ways. That's why this therapy is at present available only in government, because the whole funding is with government. That's the issue. Private hospitals do not have any funding for the plasma therapy. We are trying to get through some trials, but let's hope in future everywhere will be available and patients will get the maximum. So conversion plasma is a technique which is definitely proven or approved in the management of the corona patient, but it requires a lot of skill, facilities, as well as the experience. Okay, now the home isolation. One of the slide I explained asymptomatic patients can be advised home isolation. What is behind the idea of the home isolation? Again, we are a resource limited countries. We do not have that number of the ICU beds and the oxygen beds available in the hospital. If you admit the asymptomatic patient in the hospitals, hospital will be flooded, and those who actually need the oxygen and ventilator, and those who actually need the some attendance, they will be get you can say get away from the hospital because of the lack of bed and may die, and your mortality will go up. So home therapy is like one of the blessing and disguise. Home therapy will give you the two advantage. One advantage to the patient, second advantage to the healthcare system. Advantage to the patient that patient can stay at their home, patient can enjoy the liberty at home, patient can enjoy the home food, patient will be with their families, and the more comfort will be there. The healthcare system, the more beds will be available, the stress on the healthcare system will be reduced, and you can get the more and more comfort in managing the rest of the patient. But home care is not for each and every patient. Home care, there are certain criteria for the home care. Those who are young, those who can take the self-care, the patients who have the caregiver is available at home. If somebody healthy young individual is staying at home and he do not have anyone along with him, he is not ideal candidate for home care. That person has to download the Arogya Setu, and he has to be the every day the corporation will check their parameters. Then he needs the medical certificate that I will provide him the medical certificate that I have examined this patient. He's in a mild category. He's a fit for the home quarantine. I should advise the basic treatment, and every day I should communicate with that patient. How are you? Whether you have a fever, whether there is any worsening of the chest symptoms, whether he has any problem. So I need to follow him. If any given a time, if I feel the fever is not coming down, or his tachypneic, or his breathing is not proper, or oxygen saturation is less than 92%, he needs to get admitted. So somebody has to follow him. Somebody has to track him at the home. Second thing, that person should have the facilities at home. Like he should have the separate room and the washrooms. He should not mix with the rest of the member. For next 10 days, he will be at home in that room and with that washroom. He can use the attached washroom. These are the certain basic requirements of the home quarantine. Second thing, those who are more than 65, those who are uncontrolled diabetes, hypertension, IHB, pregnant women, these are not ideal for home quarantine. Need to get admitted in hospital for the close monitoring. So like that, you can judge which patient needs the home quarantine, which patient needs observation. You can at what time you can abrupt the home or discontinue the home quarantine, admit. Even vice versa, what we are doing, we are admitting the patient, we are settling them, and on the third and fourth day, we are offering them the home quarantine. That is another way to get the outlet for the beds. You get the more and more bed available for the deserving patient. This is how you can utilize your experience. Now one should know which are the which are the people at higher risk, that the older with the asthma, COPD, with the severe illness like uncontrolled diabetes, those who are on the steroids, those who are on the immunosuppressant drugs, those who are in the multiple diseases, people with the HIV, these are generally the high risk patients. Should be monitored very closely. How to protect yourself? Simple. Hand washing is the first thing. While coughing, just put the handkerchief on your nose and mouth, and then just throw in, properly dispose them. Don't just keep it in your pocket, or just sneeze on your shoulders. That is the best way to avoid cross. They maintain the physical distance of the 1 meter. If somebody is sick, advise him to stay at home. Don't advise him to come on the work. Like our healthcare worker, like my sister or doctor or ward boy or even my driver, if he has the symptoms, I will ask him to stay at home. There is no point in calling him and getting infection to another one. Frequent surface cleaning, those in clinics, OPDs, hospitals, you need to identify which are the commonest areas, like where we touch doorknobs, door handles, telephone, keypads, computers, and those you can say the handles of the chair. These are the frequently touched objects. Keep them frequently clean. So if the clinic is there, keep the doors open. So no need to anybody will touch to open the door. Keep the doors open. Keep the windows open. avoid AC for the cross circulation, minimize the number of individuals in your clinic. Like if suppose a patient is coming, he's healthy, he can come alone, ask him to come alone with a proper appointment. If it is sick, only one person is allowed. At the entry, just take the temperature and the common symptoms like cough, breathlessness. If somebody is having the common cold, cough, fever, don't allow him to enter into the clinic. You can leave him in a separate room. Don't allow them to touch anywhere. Waiting time should be reduced. Just dispose the patient as early as possible. Don't touch their old files and try to go into detail about the history. Just take it priority from the telephone, the previous history, because those objects might be the infected because the patient is carrying with them. Don't auscultate unnecessary. If you are not comfortable symptoms and the clinical finding, then auscultate. Otherwise, no need to auscultate the patient. Keep 1 meter distance between patient and yourself. Use the N95 mask or surgical mask, goggles, or face shield. Face shields are one of the best way to use in our OPDs and clinic. And frequent hand hygiene and frequent hand washing. I think these are the more than sufficient measures to keep yourself this thing. And put the mask. Put the mask continuously, but don't touch your mask frequently. That is one of the worst part we are observing. The indiscipline in the healthcare workers. Don't touch the mask because these are the one of the worst we are spreading. So one need to understand who will use what PPE. Like suppose you are in a triaging area in an emergency department, they can follow the hand hygiene. They should use the medical mask. If you are in a lab working for collection of the sample, they should follow the hand hygiene, gown, regular mask, not N95 mask, goggles, and the gloves. If you are working in a suspected or confirmed cases, then you can use the you should follow the hand hygiene, gown. Now you can use the medical mask, you can use the goggle and gloves. And if you are working in the ICU or the wards, COVID positive, hand hygiene, gown, N95 mask, goggle and gloves. So this is the best way to remember who should wear what and just try to follow that. That is more than sufficient for preventing this virus. And frequently asked question regarding the vaccine. There is no way you can get the vaccine nearby. Only China is nearby completing. Like there is always pre-clinical treatment in phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and then there is approval. Probably China is one of the company from the Beijing is in a stage of that. Hope so they will come up. But otherwise, we are nowhere nearby the vaccine. This is India. We are in a first stage, that is the preclinical testing. So don't believe on the newspaper and those our news media where the vaccine is available by the 15th of August. So we are in the first stage. It is next to impossible. Thank you. This is my team. I'm proud of my team. Look at this team. Don't have the race. They don't have the caste. They don't have the face. They don't have a name. They are only healthcare workers. They are only warriors who are working to save the life. They do not have the identity. And that is what the beauty of these corona warriors. They do not have identity, caste, religion, or anything, but they are working together as a team to save the life. This was our first patient who was discharged in April on the 14th day. At that time, it was ICMR guide for the 14 days. She was quite going home, and look at the happy faces, though we cannot see their smile, but this is the team. So we can work together. We can give results. Thank you.
Thank you, Kapil. Thank you very much for the informative session. I will like, if somebody want to ask question, they can unmute themselves and they can ask directly or they can keep it in the chat.
Sir, I'm having a question regarding the timing of steroid.
First, introduce yourself, madam.
I'm Dr. Leena, intensivist from Jalgaon. I'm working as a district task force member in Jalgaon. So we had lots of discussion without the government people and all. So I just want when the storm patients are increasing. So the reason we are just highlighting the reason behind this. When the dexamethasone has come into a picture, so what we are observing when the fever comes, there is always a tendency of a general practitioner. See, the fever patients never go to a MD person or intensivist or ICU. He goes to a general practitioner. So अगर fever के patient को dexamethasone दिया गया, जनरल प्रैक्टिशनर के लेवल पे. So will it affect the viral replication because they don't understand the viral replication phase and the pulmonary phase. So we need to take the video conferencing and lectures. So what message I can give to them so that they will avoid dexamethasone, because dexamethasone हा वर्ड टाइम्स ऑफ इंडिया मधून जेव्हापासून आलाय, मिथाइल पेडनिसोलला त्यांना कळत नाही पण डेक्सामेथाझोन त्यांना कळतं. तर डिस्कशन असं झालं होतं, तर ते म्हणतात की डेक्सामेथाझोनच्या एका डोसने काही फरक पडत नाही, म्हणजे दे गिव्ह युजली अ सिंगल डोस, देन दे फील फीवर आणि मग पेशंट ट्रान्सफर करतात, बिकॉज द स्ट्रॉंग पेशंट्स आर इन्क्रीजिंग नाउ डेज. सो सर, व्हॉट्स युअर व्ह्यू कपिल सर ऑन दॅट?
Simple thing. Already I told you, those who are mild or asymptomatic cases, they don't need any treatment. They have to advise the home quarantine. So this, whatever you are talking about at the OPD level or at the asymptomatic level, they don't need treatment. It's very straightforward message. Who needs the treatment? Those who are symptomatic and admitted in the hospital. So steroids should be started from the day one. Like dexamethasone is advised for either for 10 days. You need to understand when patient get admitted, already they have crossed over that incubation period and they are in the early phase of that early pneumonia phase. So fighting. The chances of the viral replications are maximum. During this phase, you should use the antivirals and dexamethasone. For OPD basis, strictly no. There is no way you can prescribe steroids as well as the azithromycin or hydroxychloroquine on OPD basis. Strictly no.
Got it.
Kapil sir?
Yeah.
Yeah, nice presentation, sir. Thank you so much. I'm Dr. Mule from Pune, urologist.
Yes, sir.
So I want to ask you, sir, how to go about pre-operatively should we do COVID tests in each and every patient, and whether the spillage or the spread is through blood, urine, what is the percentage of transmission?
Yeah, sir, it is very frequently asked question since April. I know, but I will suggest that now it is community spread is there. Whatever the government says, there is a community spread. So assume each and every patient has a corona. Already I explained you, it can have varied representation of the corona. It can have the GI symptoms, it can have the stroke, it can have the dizziness, vomiting, fever, cough, everything. So every patient you need to do the swab. Second thing, you need to do there has to be the COVID fitness like thing. Somebody should take the detailed history, what area he has come, whether anybody is positive. The people are hiding history, sir. Believe me, people are hiding that their mother is positive and admitted in other hospital. They don't give that history. This is what the unfortunate part of our medical practice. So take a detailed history, take a history of the fever or any suggestive symptoms like dry cough, malaise, body ache. Do the swab in each and every pre-surgical patient, then take for the surgery. But while doing surgery, again, I will say, even the swab is negative, assume that that patient likely to be COVID, or he may turn out, if suppose he comes within first 3 days, he will never have a symptoms as well as the swab positive. Do HRCT if you're a highly suspected patient. If suppose your swab is negative, but clinically somebody is suspecting, do HRCT. If there are GGOs, again, he will be the very highly suspected. And then wear a proper PP. I will always suggest wear a proper PP during the surgery, irrespective of the report, whether it is a positive or negative. Like N95 mask, you can have the surgical gown, you can have the gloves, you can have the face shield. Do the surgery. There are few reports, it may spill over to the blood. Fishes, already GI symptoms are 12%, it is documented. One of the highest risk is to the anesthetists because they are at the head end. And they are intubating, they are giving oxygen, they are induction. So anesthetists need to be having the more and more cautious regarding while giving the anesthesia and post-op period. Minimize the personnel in the OT. Maintain the negative pressure if possible in the OT, or minimize your time spending in those OTs. So like these precautions may help to reduce the exposure, but there is no guarantee. And surgeons, I advise, there is a PAPR, that is a positive air pressure equipment. They are more comfortable, where surgeons can spend more than 1 hour, 2 hours comfortably, because sometimes they have to do the microvascular surgery, sometimes they have to do the very difficult part. So this might be the good idea, but again, those are costly. Their cost is from 40,000, 80,000 to 1.5 lakh, but they are reusable. To try to get some local vendor which can have. I advise my surgeons in my hospital to be the PAPR is one of the choice. But other way, from April we are following that every patient is likely to be COVID and take precaution, pre-operative as well as the post-operative.
Can I ask question?
Sir, hello.
Yes, sir.
Hello.
Yes,
Sir, I'm
Yes.
Dr. Vinnu from Solapur.
Yeah.
I just wanted your opinion on about use of oral anticoagulants while discharging the patient. What are the indications?
First
And
thing, it is not
for how many
it is
days?
not the routine. It is not the routine advice for the oral anticoagulation. Those who are higher risk, like if the patient is on a ventilator for 1 week or 2 weeks, patient is obese, patient is having the heart disease or uncontrolled diabetes or the diabetic, those patients you can prescribe the low dose ecosprin, or on clinical grounds you can prescribe the oral anticoagulation. But you should not prescribe it as a regular basis oral anticoagulation to those discharged patients and each and every discharged patient. No
Sir,
need.
should we repeat D-dimer before discharging the patients?
That's a good idea.
Hello.
Sir, can I ask question?
Kapil
I am
sir.
Please.
Dr. Tupkari from Aurangabad.
Yeah.
Yeah. For mild cases who do not have hypoxia, we are using combination of HCQS and favipiravir. Is
Why
it
you
a
are
good
using the
idea?
both drugs? Madam, simple question. Why are you using the both drugs? Acyclovir is antiviral, flavipiravir is antiviral. Use only one drug. No? It is more than sufficient. Any one of them.
Because HCQS, they have documented that it also blocks the viral entry.
See, either you believe or don't believe. You cannot have the acyclovir and flavipiravir. You are wasting the two drugs. What I will suggest, no doubt it may be advantage to the patient. I agree with you. But when you are dealing with the mild cases, then why you're taking the risk of that increased QT interval and the complication of SQV? If the flavipiravir is available and if you are quite comfortable with the results and its use, you can use that, or use hydroxychloroquine alone. But combination, you have to see the drug interaction also. There is a lot of things are related with we do not follow, as a physician, we do not follow the drug interaction. Every drug has interaction with each other. We need to follow that.
Okay. And the second
Hello.
question, you said we should not use tocilizumab for the age more than 65.
I suggest that you have to judge the risk against benefit. It is not blanket. It is not blanket. It is not blunt. What I said, judge the risk against benefit. Don't forget that the tocilizumab is the immunomodulator, immunosuppressant. After giving, see, already because of the viral infection, they are immunocompromised. Their immunity is gone down. Already they are with a lot of intervention. On the top of that, you are giving the immunomodulator or immunosuppressant, so their immunity will be tremendously down. And in that, if your line is there, catheter is there, tube is there, and infection control measures, I am not sure in isolation ward at we can follow. That's the fact of the life. One need to understand even in a tertiary care center. So in such things, and there is a lot of limitations over the staffing as well as the trained staff, as well as the different technique of doing the aseptic precaution. So I will always judge the risk versus benefit, like whether my patient will get only benefit or there is a very high risk of developing the infection. Might be I will go ahead with the one dose only rather than repeating the second dose. So that judgment has to be taken by the clinician who is treating that patient. I cannot advise you blanket for each and every patient.
Okay, thank you.
I'm Dr. Thite from Umarga.
Yes, sir.
What is the cutoff point for lymphopenia? What is the count should be?
See, lymphopenia, what they advise is there are if you see, there are almost 50 studies on lymphopenia. So 700 to 1500 is commonly, if you go to all these studies, they have observed 700 to the 1500. What they another advice they are saying, just follow the lymphopenia and neutropenia ratio. And if it is worsening or your lymphopenia count is further decreasing, that is a bad predictor of the mortality. It's easy way to follow whether patient is heading towards the moderate to severe or patient is holding on. That's the best. But most of the studies is 1700 to 1500 is lymphopenia.
In diabetics, the steroids, Dexa or methylprednisolone, what is the protocol? Diabetic patient.
First thing, when you are admitting, that means you can manage with the IV. See, there is just, I think yesterday only I read a beautiful paper on analog who are using for the diabetic control. They have better results. The moment you add the Dexa, your sugars are going to haywire. put them on IV insulin or put them on the aggressive insulin management. Because these patients, it is proven that steroids makes the good results in corona patients. So you cannot withhold the prominent therapy in this corona patient. You can offer them IV insulin. You can do the 1 hourly sugar. You can do the more frequently sugar, and you can add those insulin in a higher doses for those particular 5 to 10 days. It doesn't matter. I have come across the sugar of the 600 and 700. Doesn't matter. We can manage that. Within 2 days, sugar can come back to the 180, 200, and patient will feel better.
हॅलो कपिल सर.
Yes, sir.
हा मी डॉक्टर कदम पुसेगाव.
Yes, sir.
हा तर ते हाय फ्लो नेझल ऑक्सिजन जे मशीन आपण VMMC ला डोनेट केलं, मी फेसबुकवर पाहिलं.
हो हो.
हा तर ते मशीनचा म्हणजे रोल काय, व्हेंटिलेटरच्या अगोदरच्या स्टेजला वापरण्यासाठी बेटर आहे का?
अगदी बरोबर. ते इनिशियल स्टेजेस मध्ये इफ यू सी ना ऑक्सिजन थेरपी, द कन्सेप्ट ऑफ द ऑक्सिजन थेरपी, you can give oxygen therapy with the low flow system and high flow system. Which are the low flow systems like nasal O2 simple mask or mask with the reservoir, where you can supply oxygen up to the 14 liter. But the problem with the, if you move ahead from 2 liter to 14 liter, that air is dry air. That may damage your airway, that may damage your protective reflex of this thing, and that may create a more problem for the respiratory illness. So what is this machine high flow? Name itself indicates it is a high flow nasal oxygen, which is the moist air you are giving. So this is a humidifier. There is a humidifier. You are giving the maximum from 14 liter to 50 liter. With low flow system, you can give up to maximum for 15 liter. With high flow, you can go up to 60 liter of the oxygen. First thing, you are giving up to 60 liters. Second thing, you are giving the moist and humidified air, so airways will not get damaged. Your protective reflex will be better. Third thing, with such a high flow, it gives the effect of the PEEP up to 5. So it will improve your functional residual capacity. So in initial stage, if you want to prevent to go on BiPAP or ventilator, or you want to buy time, because see, at the end of the day, this is a viral illness. It is a time-bound procedure. Your antiviral act, your steroid to act. If you want to buy time for 40 to 72 hours, try high flow. But again, don't go extremes of the high flow. If your patient is not settling on the high flow, you have to go ahead with the BiPAP or you have to intubate the patient. It is not like that I will keep a high flow for 4 days and I will observe. If suppose I put a patient on high flow and if my respiratory rate is not coming down below 30 or saturation is not going above 92%, or patient is having the sweating, there is a tachycardia, there is a tachypnea, it is not right thing to go ahead with the high flow. I will intubate the patient.
Okay. And so
negative pressure room is required for high flow?
No, madam, now try and understand. No, see, negative pressure is ideal for the corona. We are in India. Where is the negative pressure room? In Ruby, such a luxury hospital, I have only 7 rooms of the negative pressure rooms. And I have 150 patients. I have 50 critical care patients. So negative pressure luxury is not possible in India. Forget
so
about
in a row,
let me complete. So second part is high flow. Yes, high flow is the aerosol generation because you are putting with the nasal. What you can do, you can try to use the low flow. Like rather than going for 50-60 liters, you try to manage with the 20-30 liters. First thing. Second thing, these patients are conscious. You can put the N95 mask or the surgical mask over the patient. It will reduce the exposure to the healthcare worker. Third thing, all healthcare workers are in PPE. Ask them to keep a distance of the 1 meter while dealing with high flow meter. Fourth thing, put them in a non-AC rooms with the ventilation. That will reduce your viral load. So you have to use the measures which will reduce the exposure. And the most important part, don't advise nebulizers in any isolation unit as a rule, because nebulization is the highly aerosol generation that you can say facility. So nebulizers are almost banned in all these things, unless until he's asthmatic, or asthmatic patient will do well with the steroids also. So use the N95 mask or mask with the high flow. You can keep a distance of the 1 meter. You can use the low flow. You can keep it in a non-AC with the highly ventilated rooms, and avoid nebulization. This is more than sufficient to avoid exposure.
Hello, Kapil.
Yeah.
Good evening, sir. I am Dr.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Hello. Good evening, sir.
I
am physician in Umarga. Sir, I have 2 questions. My first question is about cytokine storm, which is happening in advanced stage of infection. As it is due to acute severe inflammatory response of cytokines, chemokines, interleukin, neutrophils, and other histamine-producing agents, then is there any role of mast cell stabilizers like montelukast or second or newer generation antihistamines like bilastine, bivastatin, or any antihistamine for that matter? This is my first question.
No,
And
no.
the second question is there any association between this cytokine storm and other autoimmune diseases like rheumatoid arthritis, SLE, vasculitis syndrome, or spondyloarthropathies associated with HLA-B27 gene, sir?
Okay. Regarding your first question, when we are saying the cytokine storm, it is a late stage of the disease.
Yes.
Severe stage of the disease. Then your montelukast and these drugs will not be sufficient enough to control that. You need the IV strong immunomodulators. That means the IL-6 inhibitors or IL-6 blockers. That means either tocilizumab is the IL-6 inhibitor and itolizumab, which was launched yesterday, was the IL-6 blocker. Or even you can use the cytosorb along with the renal replacement therapy, which will remove those cytokines. Cytokine storm is not new. Cytokine storm is already established in any infection. Forget about the viral infection. In sepsis, bacterial sepsis, you can use all these things. So when you are talking about the severity of the disease and the severe stage of the disease, you should use the strong agents to control, because it is not going to give you the time. First thing. Second thing, the correlation in between your HLE and HIV, and I have seen all these patients developing the corona and going into the serious disease. So there is no major correlation. Even those HIV patients who are on antiviral, they are also develop the corona, mild to moderate disease. I have just recently discharged a patient with the rheumatoid arthritis whose CRPs were more than 50. Those patients develop corona mild to moderate. They have also responded to the steroids and others. So I think there is not very good correlation amongst all these things. Though majority of the anti-SCV or anti-malarial or anti-psoriasis drugs are coming to control the cytokines.
Sir, I am Dr. Anil Baskul from Bid.
Yeah.
I have a question regarding home isolation and quarantine.
Yes, sir.
Sir, for positive patients, we advise home isolation for 10 days, followed by home quarantine for 14 more days. And for negative patient, we advise home quarantine for 14 days. Is it correct?
No. First thing, for negative patient, why you are advising the home quarantine? Either they are negative or highly suspected. If they are highly suspected, repeat the swab. So that was, I understand. We are after 3.5 months, we are talking about the corona. We are not in March or April. Now the things are quite clear regarding the quarantine. Initially, they were talking about the 28 days of quarantine. Now it dropped to 17 days. So for negative patient, no. If they are close contact with the positive patient, you may advise them for the physical distancing and this thing at home. For positive patient, home quarantine is advised for 10 days. The infectivity reduces after the 17 days. Generally, we drop down from 30 days to 20 days to the 17 days. So it is whole game is about the infectivity, not the presence of virus. Even if you do the swab on the 20th day, it may come positive. That doesn't mean that a patient is infective. It might be the dead virus.
Yes. Thank you, sir.
Dr. Page from Sholapur.
Yeah, please, sir.
Hello.
हाँ बोलो Dr. Page.
Sir, what are the incidences of corona encephalitis first, and second, what are the neurological manifestations of coronas?
Yeah, very good question. It is related to my core specialty. First thing, encephalitis is extremely rare. It was documented 1 or 2 cases in USA, hemorrhagic encephalitis. So it is rare. Regarding the neurological manifestation, it can present like anything: dizziness, drowsiness, vertigo, TIA, mild stroke, major stroke, large vessel stroke, venous sinus thrombosis, convulsions, icy bleed, everything. And I have seen all these cases.
Yes. Yesterday there was a patient with Bell palsy with corona.
Now you need to see the correlation with that. See, the stroke correlation with the corona is that microvascular coagulopathy.
Thank you.
Now in Bell you have to find out whether it is he was having the corona and it is related with that. But at the end of the day, Bell's palsy is always the post-viral, so it is likely to be related with the coronavirus.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Please
Yes,
document that case. Don't leave it like that.
Yeah. I recorded that case.
Yeah, please.
Thank you, sir.
Hello, Kapil. This is Dr. Vijay Patil from Umarga.
Yes, sir.
Do all the patients who are settled, do they require antivirals? Secondly, if the patient is on Fabiflu and he is deteriorating, at what time we should start remdesivir? And at the time of discharge, we should do throat swab or nasal swab again while discharge? These are the three questions.
First thing, for mild cases or asymptomatic cases, no treatment is required. If your symptomatic patient is admitted in a hospital and is a mild case, then you can use either hydroxychloroquine or flavipar. If the patient is fully conscious, cooperative, and in a stage of degluting the 18 tablets, then only prescribe the flaviparin.
Yes.
Suppose your patient is on a flaviparin and his oxygen requirements are going up. He is requiring NIV or high flow. I will not give flaviparin because he is not able to deglute it. I will change you to the remdesivir. So, remdesivir might be on day 1 I will start, or might be on day 3 I will discontinue flaviparin and I will go ahead with the remdesivir because my patient is not able to take that 18 tablets. That's the major issue. He needs the IV. At the time of the discharge, no need to have a swab. Now, recent guidelines says the patient is asymptomatic for 3 consecutive days of oxygen. On 10 day, you can discharge. No need to do the swab. If the patient requires oxygen and he is a moderate to severe category, on 14 days, after 14 days, if it is 3 consecutive days he is off oxygen, do the 1 swab only. And if it is negative, send him. That was the guidelines.
Hello, Kapil.
Yes, sir.
Is there how is the availability of remdesivir in Pune? We are not getting it in Solapur.
See, unfortunately, media is very different. That's why the remdesivir shortage is there. But that is not the only treatment. That's what I'm saying. If you have hydroxychloroquine, please use that. Ivermectin, oxy, please use that. If you have flaviparin, please use that. So these therapies are advisable, but they are not the only treatment. Like media सगळीकडे सांगितले की रामबाण उपाय. This is not.
Sir,
Suppose the patient is deteriorating. He is on venti. Both the lungs are showing ground glass appearances, and he is on venti with a high FiO2 with a PEEP of 12 to 15. Those patients who are very toxic, those patients, for that sake, I am asking.
Again, if that drug is not available, First thing, those who are deteriorating, we are not God. We have to accept that in certain patients, the mortality is inevitable. You cannot say that each and every patient will be safe. That mortality is related with their late presentation and the comorbid condition. That is nothing to do with the addition of the antiviral or your optimization. Even if the remdesivir patients are dying, it is not like that if you do remdesivir patients are not dying. Even on ventilator, even on NIV patients are dying, even on remdesivir. So the crux of the whole thing is your early recognition, early treatment, early antiviral, and good optimization. Offer them the good optimization. Because of this isolation, because of this wrong concept of the PP, because of the uncomfortable situation, we are not offering the basic treatment to the patients, and that is more killing factor rather than all these other antivirals and the rest of the drugs.
Sir, similar case where we are little bit confused between the storm and the pulmonary and the early viral phase, like 5 to 10 days, when you are admitting, when the patient is admitting with the oxygen requirement and we are starting antivirals. So what is the time clinically when the lab is not there? Like here, it takes labs to get 2 days in a government college or 24-48 hours to get the lab. So clinically, they have to identify the storm. As you said, the oxygen requirement increase. the fever increase, that is storm, and the patient is day first here, but the disease day might be 8. So at that time, if you immediately on admission add him antivirals, then when is the time to add a steroid? Like immediately we have to wait for 24 hours, or immediately we have to clinically suspect the storm and add steroid? That is the main little bit judgment I'm just asking you. Till the labs came.
Day one. Suppose you cannot see, you have to take a detailed history at exactly what symptoms start, whether he presented on 8 day or 10 day. What is suppose on admission, my patient is having the oxygen requirement and pneumonia on X-ray. Why I should wait?
Okay, fine.
Not like that 1 day, 7 day. It is
so steroid and antiviral simultaneously you have to hit hard. Okay.
I will give my prescription on day one if the patient is in a moderate to severe, those who require the oxygen. First thing, I will start them with the antiviral. I will start them on the Dexa. I will start them with low molecular heparin, vitamin C, oxygen, good hydration, and supportive treatment.
Okay, patch and oxygen requirement. Okay, fine.
Again, why your patch will appear on X-ray on later stage? Even clinically, if anybody requires oxygen, that means his lungs are affected. You have to do that.
Sir, are you using lopinavir or ritonavir now?
Honestly speaking, in initial stage when nothing was available in April, I have started in few patients. My results were fantastic, but unfortunately, that was withdrawn by the ICMR because of the lack of evidence. First thing. Second thing, with the leponavir and ritonavir, the problem is amylase, your pancreatitis and the LFTs get deranged very grossly. Out of few patients, I have one patient where LFTs were gone like a hell. Bilirubin was more than 15, but fortunately we recognized that it was a drug induced. We withdraw that, and after 5 days he settled and we discharged on the 14th day. But nowadays, when the other alternatives are available, we are not prescribing that drug. And unfortunately, the evidence is not there from the ICMR side. They have withdrawn that guideline for these antivirals.
And do you use ivermectin?
Again, don't compare with me because I have available remdesivir and the fluoxetine. But ivermectin in few patients I have used ivermectin. Alternate day 12 milligram OD for 3 days along with the doxy.
Good evening, sir. I am Dr. Vijay Gaikwad from Jalgaon.
Yeah.
We are treating a lot of patients of COVID. Yeah. Many patients are coming in a severe stage, and then as per our discharge guideline, as per our discharge guidelines, as per our discharge guidelines, we have to do the swab, one swab at the end of, after the recovery, when the recovery starts after 3 days. And the guidelines says if the swab is negative, patient can be discharged. But what to do if the swab is positive?
Yeah, it's a good question. But again, see, generally after 14 days or 21 days, your swab starting negative. That means the infectivity is going down. We have to see, just understand, we have to see the infectivity of the virus, not the presence of virus. Day one, virus is positive, swab is positive, patient is infective. 2 weeks after, the infectivity start dropping. But swab may come positive because dead virus
keeps coming positive.
What we are doing the cyclic threshold value. You ask your lab, they must be doing, anybody does the RT-PCR, the swab is positive, ask them the cyclic threshold value. What is meant by cyclic threshold value? The particular virus needs that number of the viable this thing to produce that fluorescent signals which gives you the positivity. If your cyclic threshold is more than 40, that means your patient
more than 40,
even though swab is positive, you can move them out to your regular wards and ICU. Okay.
CT value more than
40, and you have to ask all 3 genes. That means N1, N2, and RDRP. And RDRP is more sensitive and specific. You have to see that this value is more than 40. So you need to spend some time your pathologists and microbiologists other than just following the swab. It is sometimes swab comes positive after the 1.5 months. Do you think we should keep this patient? No,
that is the problem occurring.
That is not advisable because already we have shortage
of bed.
Second thing, it affects mentally on the patient. After 2 weeks, patients start getting disturbed mentally. Third thing, we may lose the patient in this particular period.
So can this thing be included in the guidelines?
At present, government is not including. You can take a decision on your own. See, nobody is going to ask you the question if you have the valid explanation. You cannot everything put it on the government and those.
No, sir, I am working in a government hospital.
Writing.
I am working in a government hospital.
You can
No, sir, I am working in a government hospital.
Yes.
That's why I'm asking.
You can, if you have a scientific valid evidence for taking a decision, I don't think anybody can take an objection. I'm doing it in my hospital regularly. Nobody come to see because they don't know. Why I should go and ask my
Yeah.
medical director and administrator, shall I ship the patient? It is my decision.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Myself, Dr. Smita Yadav. Sir, I just want to know regarding this HCQ, there is a debate going on. Still, it is the drug of choice for prophylaxis. What is your, will you throw some light on prophylaxis?
Simple. Our ICMR guidelines clearly advise for prophylaxis. They have done their own study. So we have to believe on somebody. We cannot believe on Lancet. We cannot believe on NAGM. We cannot believe on the European countries. And we are not believing on our own body. Then it is just impossible to treat the patient. Our ICMR advise SCQ prophylaxis in a high-risk patient. Please follow that. We are following. If you don't believe, don't follow.
One more question, sir. Regarding the presence of virus in the peritoneal fluid, what is your experience? Like I'm gynecologist.
There are few reports about the presence of virus in blood as well as the peritoneal fluid. So one need to be careful while handling the surgical.
Yeah, because the test is not. We are working in small place like Barshi, where test is not available. Swab testing, nothing is there. Only the government. Every patient is positive and
You are
taking
more
the
safe.
precautions.
You are more
But
safe
still,
because those who are doing the swab, the report is negative, so they might be under the false sense of security. I'd say you are doing the great job. Follow that.
sir, very nice presentation and informative. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Very nice.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hello. Yes.
हॅलो
हा बोला.
सर मी एनेस्थेशियोलॉजिस्ट आहे. मला विचारायचंय की हल्ली ऑब्स्टेटिशियन सगळे साधारण 9 months 37 weeks ला कोविड टेस्ट करतात. सपोज द पेशंट कम्स फॉर द इमर्जन्सी अँड दे आर सेइंग दॅट इट इज व्हॅलिड फॉर द 7 days. So is it true?
Guidelines says so, but again, the 48 hours is generally the cutoff limit what we follow in our hospital. Because see, the 7 days, these guidelines are most probably done the Western. What do you mean by 7 days? The provided that patient is isolated at home in a proper environment with following the all guidelines like mask and the physical distancing, then 7 days is allowed. Now tell me in which part of the India our patient follow these guidelines. If I do the swab and I am going to some social gatherings, I am attending the functions, then that swab has no meaning for that. So this is very standard. In a very standard situation, it is advisable 1 week you can believe on that, provided that patient is isolated and following the all instruction of infection control. Ideally, he should be quarantined for 7 days and then go for the surgery or delivery.
Sir.
Thank you.
Hello.
Yeah, please.
हॅलो सर, HCQ prophylaxis 6 आठवड्यानंतर यूज करू शकतो का?
There is an advice for 7 to 8 weeks, but we are continuing. You can continue, but again, you have to see the risk of the cardiac as well as the hypertension and other things. Don't prescribe HCQ prophylaxis to each and everyone, or don't take it for the long term. HCQ is not new drugs. Arthritis patient takes for years to go.
Yes.
So we should not bother about their risk. But again, in certain individuals, you have to be very careful.
So how much is the risk of disease transmission from COVID positive asymptomatic patient?
Almost there is no percentage wise, but maximum. Because see what happens, this is a droplet infection. It is not only go through the airborne. So that asymptomatic patient, if he coughs or he has a sneezing or he touches the objects, then other person touches that same object, there is a risk to transmit. So asymptomatic carriers can transmit the disease, and it is accepted by the WHO also.
Yes. other than this, sir, how this the lockdown effect is going to it's going to help this transmission, or what will you suggest?
Nothing. First thing, lockdown is nothing to do with the disease transmission. First thing, one need to understand, lockdown is nothing. Why we are advising lockdown to flatten that curve. That means we don't want n number of cases in a short time. Lockdown is helpful for flattening the curve. That's all. Full stop. Lockdown is nothing to do with the transmission. Lockdown is nothing to do with the controlling the measures. And that's what we have seen after the 2 months. Why suddenly cases rises and we have to reinforce the lockdown? Because we follow the infection control measures. That's the issue.
Okay. Thank you.
Hello.
Hello. हाँ डॉक्टर बिरादर बोला.
हाँ sir. Why there is a more mortality in doctors, and how to prevent the mortality in doctors?
First thing, there is doctors' mortality is not very high as compared to the Western countries. There was a recent evidence of 106 doctors who had we lost during this pandemic. But it is not the doctors' mortality, or it's not the common public. It's how meticulously we follow the infection control measures. That is more important. What you follow in your day-to-day life. What I have observed, the most of the healthcare workers follow the very stringent guidelines when they are on duty. But duty is 8 hours. What you are doing for 16 hours? Have you following that off duty? They are doing parties. They are sitting together for lunch. They are going for the outlet. That is not done. They are not using masks when they are off duty. They are not maintaining the physical distance. So mortality is not related with the only healthcare versus non-healthcare workers. Second part. We are at high risk because we are coming across the maximum cases of the positive cases. So we need to be more alert rather than saying that the infection rate is more in healthcare workers. Like I have just last week only published, in 3.5 months, almost 700 healthcare workers we have observed in our isolation ward. We followed them for 3.5 months. Out of that, 9 healthcare workers developed the infection, and again mild. None of them has a mortality, none of them has a moderate disease. Majority of them doesn't require admission. Out of 9, 2 were doctors, 3 were staff, and rest are with the class 3, class 4. So now you need to understand, doctors are getting infection because they are doctors and nurses are coming in contact with the aerosol. And the problem with the class 3, class 4, their illiterate level is less. They don't know the infection. In last 50 years, them what is the infection, or train them for the infection control policy. They are living in a cluster area. They are low socioeconomic class. There are so many factors are there. It is not only hospital who is responsible for the infection. There are other factors are also coming into that. Like, one of the stories I just gone through yesterday. There is an AIMS doctor who is acquired infection because he gave mouth-to-mouth resuscitation to save the life. I think this is nonsense. Sorry to use that word, but during Corona, how you can give? You know that is a positive patient. First thing we should realize that we are not God. We are doctors. Our families depends on us. We are not putting ourselves into the danger. We are putting whole family into the danger. We have to follow it very stringently.
Can
Sir,
viral
sir,
load affect the prognosis?
Yes.
Viral loads. Doctors are more exposed to the viral loads. Viral.
Yeah,
can affect the prognosis.
If you follow the stringent protocols and if you are working in areas, take the SCQ prophylaxis, take adequate rest, maintain good hydration, maintain good food habits.
Sir, like Dharavi pattern, do you have something which can be called as Kapil pattern in your mind?
No, there is nothing like that. The pattern is very simple. The patients early, treat them early, give them good optimization, use whichever the drugs available in a right stage with the right drug, and pick up the hypoxia. That's what the bottom line. Pick up the hypoxia by pulse oximetry. What is the Dharavi pattern? What they did, they went to the house and house monitoring. They have pick up the high patient. They check the oxygen saturation. Whose oxygen saturation less than 90%. They brought to the hospital, provided them the oxygen and the optimization, and said, so that thing needs to be done during the lockdown. Lockdown is not only that you don't allow anybody on the road, it doesn't work. What you do inside the lockdown is more important rather than applying the lockdown.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So there are situations where the patient is admitted for some other complaints. After through 2 to 3 days of admission, he turns out to be having fevers and everything, and again,
COVID is positive.
tested, it becomes COVID test becomes positive. How to interpret this?
Simple.
Suppose he got admitted for trauma, and after 2-3 days he gets fever. The routine.
It's a very routine, sir. Now, that's what I said, that we need to learn to live with the corona. Assume that every patient is corona, even in a non-COVID. See, my infection rate in a isolation ward is 1.3% to the healthcare worker and 2.3% in a non-COVID area. What is mean by that? The non-COVID area, doctors and the healthcare workers assume that there is no corona. That means they must be not stringently following the infection control measure. See, there are very clear guidelines. If you are protected health worker and if you came across the positive case, there is no risk of the infection. If you are using the N95 mask, if you are using the gown or gloves, if you use the face shield, to maintain the physical distance while doing the aerosol procedure, wear the goggles and the face shield. That is more than sufficient.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Kapil, thank you very much. Lot of people have appreciated your talk in the chat box, like nice presentation, informative talk, and lot of thanks they are given to you. It was very informative. But few questions like people have put, like whether this hypochlorite solution can be used on the clothes and surfaces like fomites and all those things.
Yeah. You have to dilute it in a proper proportion. 0.1 to 0.5% sodium hypochlorite diluted and frequently in high risk areas you can do it frequently.
Okay. Dr. Pratibha Patil, she has asked, even though in children incidence is less, use of steroids, indication at what stage in pediatric?
Again, I am saying those who are admitted mild to moderate case, you can start it from the day one. Don't wait till patient goes on oxygen or on ventilator. And Dexa oral or IV 6 milligram OD for 10 days, or methylprednisolone 1 milligram per kg for initially 3 to 5 days.
Rajesh Manvatkar is asking, RT-PCR negative and patient is highly suspicious of COVID-19. Can I prescribe remdesivir or favipiravir or tocilizumab? Yes, already answered.
Again, corona is a clinical diagnosis. Don't go only by the swab. If you are highly suspecting, offer him antiviral. It is clearly advised remdesivir or any antiviral you can prescribe in admitted patients, even in highly suspected patients. No need to wait. I told you the swabs can come after 5 days also positive. You cannot waste those 5 days for the not giving treatment to the patients.
Sir, what are the antiviral criteria in HIV patients who are COVID positive?
What are the
antiviral drug criteria in HIV patients who are COVID positive?
Same. We are not. That's why in 2 HIV patients I came across, we have prescribed all antivirals, those who are they already on them, and at that time these drugs were not available, so we prescribed MSC.
Hello. Sir, any comments on arsenic as prophylaxis?
No.
Hello.
Dr. Jyoti wants to ask something. Madam.
Yes. This is Dr. Jyoti from Solapur. I would like to know about the H1N1 vaccination, flu vaccination during this COVID era. Should we go for it?
Yes, you should go, because we are now. This is high time. We'll start getting the dengue and all these H1N1. So ideally, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Sir, hello. Good evening, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm Dr. Vijay Gaikwad.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hello. Bola, doctor.
During your talk, you are repeatedly telling us that you are talking about gown.
Yes.
Hello.
Yes.
Hello.
Yes, I am listening.
Yes, sir. During your talk, you are repeatedly referring regarding PP, that N95 mask and gown.
Yeah.
So gown means what? Cotton, regular cotton surgical gown, or non-woven PP that is must.
Now you need to clarify in which area you are working. If you are working in a isolation
in a ward,
with the ventilator.
Yeah, isolation.
Then you should use the proper standard PP. There are GGRD, DDRD or DDRO. There is something very specific, more than 90.
GSM 90, GSM 80.
That is for only those who are working in a ICU with the close proximity with the ventilatory or high flow or nasal O2 or aerogel generation procedures like intubation, extubation. Okay.
Yes,
sir. Working with the physical distance of 1 meter and in isolation ward, even you can have a disposable gowns or those cotton gowns, clothes, N95 mask, goggles, and the mask. If you are working in a non-COVID areas, face shield, N95 mask, and your hand hygiene, they are more than sufficient. So it's up to you in which area you are working.
Yeah.
That's what I say. Why we are wasting the PPs, first thing. Second thing, to work with PP is not easy. It affects on the efficiency of the healthcare worker. If you wear more than 4 hours, your efficiency will be less. And if your efficiency will be less, then your results will be worse. So you need to understand whenever the necessary, use that. Otherwise, you can comfortably move in that ward. Offer your best of the experience and treatment to your patient, then survival rate will be more.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Dr. Shashi Kanade, madam, you want to ask something? Dr. Shashi.
We should take. Okay, sir.
बोला madam, बोला.
Hello. Hello, sir. We can take HCQs परत एकदा घेऊ शकतो का विचारा ना, sir.
ऐकते ते बोला तुम्ही विचारा.
Hello.
हाँ बोला ना madam.
Hello, sir. We have taken HCQs in the April. As a prophylactic. Once again, we can take.
SCQ is a very safe drug. SCQ is, these arthritis patients are taking years. So you know, but again, it is related with your age and it is related with your risk of the hypertension and IHD. Accordingly, you should not use prolonged use.
Right, sir. In between we discontinued, sir.
You can continue if you are working with the high risk patients.
Sir, what's that?
We are
questions.
We are not working with COVID patients.
Cases.
Hello, Kapil.
Sir, bola, sir.
We are not working with COVID patient. We are looking general OPD and general gynec obstetric patient and surgical patient. In that case also, shall we take SCQ as a prophylaxis?
No. It is only advisable for high risk patient, not for the high risk healthcare workers, not for the regular healthcare workers.
Sir, one statistical questions. Daily we hear about some cases that there are 60 cases coming from this area, 80 cases coming from this area. I think the exact cases are almost much more than this. How to interpret this?
We are talking about the surveillance. We are talking about what? You are talking about what? Whether it is a number community spread or you are talking about clusters?
Community spread.
Yeah,
community spread.
See, whatever the said and done, community spread must be there because numbers are rising. It's rising out of proportion.
Yeah, but there are detected cases. The undetected cases may be n number of them.
That's what I said. Assume each and every patient is a COVID.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Can repeat infection of the corona occurs?
It is not documented anywhere. In the world, it is not documented.
Its immunity is good.
No, I will tell you. What happens when you do discharge the patient on 14 days or 17 days, your swab is negative. And on after 2 weeks, somebody does the swab and it is positive. Then they start with reinfection. It is not reinfection. Might be that 17 days swab was not adequately taken. There are so many pitfalls in between the swab and it was negative. And your dead virus also can give a swab positive on the 37th day. That doesn't mean that that patient has a reinfection. Might be it is a dead virus.
It means that's good immunity.
If you develop the corona after 20 days, there is immunity.
Okay.
For what period of such pandemic?
How to differentiate between dengue fever and corona fever, sir?
Very difficult. On clinical grounds, sir, if suppose somebody gets with the low platelet, corona never get the low platelet. There are very few patients documented on low platelet. So that's what I say. These are clinical diagnoses. Nobody is going to give you any difference. Leptospira will come, dengue will come, your H1N1 will come. You will have the mixed infection. So you have to treat them either mixed infection or on the clinical basis. It's going to There is no treatment for dengue. If suppose somebody comes with dengue or leptospira, I always say that I add doxy. Doxy is a magic drug. It will cover your rickettsia, malaria, leptospira, dengue, as well as the corona.
Thank you, sir.
Lot of people have not taken influenza vaccine or pneumococcal vaccine. So in this scenario, shall we ask them to take the vaccine?
All these influenza, these vaccines are advisable for the certain class of the patients, those who are COPD, those who are pregnant ladies, those who are neonates or pediatric patients. So these are the high risk patients are always advised the vaccine. Everybody cannot take the vaccine, and how long it can take the vaccine, because the vaccine is yearly affair.
But health person will be high risk, na sir, or H1N1.
But your own immunity and your healthy status and your age is the more immunity rather than vaccine.
Okay, sir.
Okay, Kapil. Maximum जवळजवळ 92 लोकांनी अटेंड केला सेशन. 92.
Sir, अजून एक क्वेश्चन आहे माझा.
Sir, one more question.
One more question, sir.
Hello.
बोला इंडी, बोला.
Sir, COVID-19 can affect the immunity of our body.
Surely, it's a viral infection, so naturally it will affect on the immunity.
It decrease immunity.
Any viral infection decreases the immunity.
Okay.
उस्मानाबाद हा बोला पुन्हा बोला त्याच्या
हाँ sir. Hello.
Yes.
हा बोला
Are we using air conditioners in the ICU?
Yes. Now, because there is no choice. Air condition. The problem with the air condition is there is a recirculation. So you have to call your your engineer guy and try to use the more and more air exchangers. That is the one thing. You're moving in a PP, it doesn't matter. AC. We all are working in an AC environment. We cannot have that luxury of the negative pressure. Or
Yes.
yes,
ठीक है. Thank you, sir.
it will be more.
Hello.
कपिल हा बोला.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Bye.
ओके.
Thank you, sir.
वन लास्ट. कपिल जवळजवळ 92 लोकांनी आपलं सेशन अटेंड केलं आणि जवळजवळ संपूर्ण महाराष्ट्रातून होते लोक, पुण्याहून होते लोक, त्यानंतर जळगाव, औरंगाबाद, उस्मानाबाद जिल्हा, इकडे सगळीकडूनच बीड, सोलापूर, बऱ्याच ठिकाणून लोक होते. सो इट वॉज नाईस प्रेझेंटेशन बाय यू ऑल्सो अँड पीपल ऑल्सो. सगळ्या बऱ्याच डॉक्टरांनी आणि त्याचा फायदा भरपूर सगळ्यांना होईल. अँड वी थँक यू व्हेरी मच. विथ अ शॉर्ट नोटीस यू अग्रीड टू give this time, and it was large session. Actually, it was went for 2 hours. So I thank you very much on behalf of all of us, and hope we'll meet some other time also.
Thank you. Thank you.